Hey guys, welcome back into 4 Down territory here on our second episode in 2014, our third episode total. Thank you very much for joining us. For AJ Lawrence, I'm Bobby DeMuro, and it's time to debate sports, so let's get going. Now, first down here, we're going to talk about the Hall of Fame in baseball. The Baseball Writers Association of America will send in their Hall of Fame ballots on January 8th. This airs a week after they've sent in their ballots. However, we're filming it just beforehand, so we're going to do our own ballot and debate a little bit about the Hall of Fame. So, AJ, let me start off because the elephant in the room with this, with the Hall of Fame and everything here, is performance-enhancing drugs.
Absolutely.
Bonds, McGuire, Sosa, Palmeiro, Clemens, those guys all in their second year on the ballot. Do they get in on your ballot? And maybe more importantly, do they have a chance to get in the Hall of Fame at all?
I would say that let's keep them out. Unfortunately, they were excellent players. I think that they performed well, but they had that extra oomph. And if you would have brought them down to the level of everyone else, they may not have, excelled to the extent that they did. So I think the writers will probably see it the same way.
And they have so far. Bonds and Clemens got about 37% of the vote last year. You need 75 to get in. The other guys were much smaller, Sammy Sosa especially. My only argument with that, AJ, is Bonds was obviously on steroids or on something. However, so was everybody else in the early 2000s. So you say bring them down to their level, but everybody's level was elevated, and Bonds was still the best. You still got no love for him?
Yeah, I think I'm going to pass on Bonds. He was a little rough around the edges too, I'm sure, with the writers. So I don't think that's not going to work out at all, anyways.
There's a couple interesting ones here. First-year guys who will get in: Greg Maddux, Tom Glavine, classic guys. Obviously, 3 managers have already been voted in: Bobby Cox, Tony La Russa, Joe Torre by the committee from last year. There's a couple. I knew it. There's a couple guys here that I think should probably get in and may get in at the end of the day. Craig Biggio's one of them.
Absolutely.
An interesting one is Hideo Nomo. When we look at the Hall of Fame in baseball, I put him on my ballot only because it's not just the numbers on the field, the no-hitters he has thrown. He was a great pitcher for a while, but he was that first Japanese-American player to really come over and blow up big. And we're talking about this off camera. It's not just what you do on the field, but maybe the accomplishments in the broader cultural sense of baseball. And I think Nomo might be an interesting Hall of Famer. Not a first ballot guy, but I think he eventually gets in one day, right?
Yes, no, I completely agree. And you're right. It's what they do as athletes in terms of their community and on the global level, also the national level.
Yeah, and he really brought baseball. It existed in Japan, of course, but he really molded the two, maybe more than any other player except for Ichiro. There's 2 first-year guys I want to watch, and I want to talk about them with you. The first is Jeff Kent, great offensive second baseman, one of the best ever. Not the nicest guy to reporters. Kind of had the Barry Bonds problem. He's not a PED guy, but do you think he gets in on the Hall of Fame, or do reporters hold grudges against a guy like him?
I think that the reporters will probably hold a grudge. If you treated them terribly every day when they were just trying to get in and get their story, it's something you don't forget. And unfortunately, they don't have to be completely objective.
And we're members of the media now, so Jeff, apparently if AJ could vote for you, she would not. But that's kind of an interesting debate. I think frankly, it's BS that reporters hold grudges against these guys. I understand if you're getting a quote every day and you can't get it from him, but we're adults here, and if Jeff Kent's the greatest hitting second baseman ever, put him in the Hall of Fame. You're not a 12-year-old. The grudge to me is stupid. I can't believe guys hold it, and I think it's embarrassing, frankly.
Yeah, I know. I think you do make a good point, but at the end of the day, if you made their jobs harder, that's how it is.
He made pitchers' jobs harder, too. That's all I'm concerned. The other thing about the Hall of Fame, last point before we move on, and by the way, Frank Thomas is my other first-year guy I think has to get in, but he's kind of obvious and he'll get in. The other point to make here is, in baseball, you need 75% of the writers' vote. It's very, very difficult to get into the Hall of Fame. In football and basketball, they hand out Hall of Fame admittances like candy, and it almost cheapens the Hall of Fame in those 2 sports. Do you think baseball is too difficult to get in the Hall of Fame, or is it perfect the way it is, should it stay there?
No, baseball has to maintain that level of integrity so that players strive harder to get in, and it keeps it so it's at an elite level, so you know who truly, truly worked hard and was nice enough to reporters to get in.
Fist bump. We agree. All right, let's move to second down after the fist bump. Every time we agree, we're going to do a fist bump, and then, which will be like once every other show. All right, so second down, interesting now, we've got a legal topic here. If you have ever played an EA Sports video game, if you own a college football jersey, which I may actually own 1 or 2, you have bought something from a licensing partner of the NCAA. And right now there is a lawsuit going through the courts that was actually just reaffirmed a couple months ago to keep moving through the courts, that college athletes and their lawyers are suing the NCAA, saying it's sort of an antitrust issue about whether these athletes' likenesses are being used without these athletes being compensated for it. In very short, before we get into the debate, when you were a college athlete, I was one, you sign a waiver. The waiver indicates that your likeness, your image, your number, your jersey, your whatever, can be used by the league, the team, the NCAA, to promote themselves, to sell jerseys, to promote games and whatnot, and you obviously don't receive compensation because you're an amateur athlete. Is that right? Before we get into the merits of the lawsuit, what do you think about the issue? Should these guys be getting money for their likeness being used?
I certainly think that they should be getting money. You know, they're out there, they're performing, they're training, and they're putting on a show. And for someone else to be able to reap the benefits of it, no, it doesn't sit well with me, especially when it goes after their college career and their entity's still making money on them.
You know, we like Beyonce on this show, in case you didn't tell from the last episode, but she makes money when her likeness is used and whatever. And I know she's a professional singer, but the action is the same. She performs, she entertains, Johnny Manziel entertains, but he's not making any money.
Yep, that's exactly the case.
Now, is this sign-to-play idea, the legal question I have first for you, AJ, if you're an athlete and you don't sign these forms, you are ineligible to play. Doesn't matter if you're an All-American academically, doesn't matter how good you are, whatever, you cannot play the sport. Is that legal in the first place, to railroad these guys into signing a form before they can play?
Unfortunately it is. Those are the terms that they set up as a private institution to get you to play. And so they have to abide by those rules, but that's also something that they're going to look at in the courts in terms of if they're going to be railroading these players from, you know, making the money.
And do these players have enough proof, I guess, in some of these cases with likeness being used, that's gone back decades now, 20 and 30 years, do you think anything will change in the courts? Do you think players will end up getting a stipend? Will they get money for jerseys being sold? Will we ever see a day where a player makes money in the NCAA legally?
Certainly. I think there's an open market for it, and they're realizing that as we move forward. And we saw the recent case where the NCAA was suing the video game maker, and of course it didn't end up going in their favor, and they settled for $40 million, and now they're cutting their entire college line. The fact is that these players are out there, and they're making money, and they should be able to reap the benefits of that. It's very similar to a child star out making money, and now they have a trust fund that collects their money so they can have it at a later date. If they come up with something similar to that for college players so it doesn't wreck the integrity or character of the game while they're playing, then that could work. But
that's a great idea.
Knows?
Give them a stipend, whether it's monthly or yearly, a couple $1,000s. It's not going to be millions, I would hope, but they can't take it until they graduate or until their eligibility runs out. That's a great idea. I like it. 2 fist bumps in one show.
There we go.
We're on a roll. All right, let's move to third down. Enough college sports.
All right. But of course, just a little bit more of college sports. Now that we know that the bowl system, it's all over, and the bowl system is actually changing, how do you feel about the changes, and where do you want to go with them?
I'm glad the BCS is dead. I really hated it at the start. It turned out it worked pretty well. You really did get a true national champion. The 4-team playoff, I like it as a +1. I'll be interested to see how they do it down the road and which 4 teams, if they'd been doing it this year, which 4 teams would have been in. I prefer, and I don't know about you, but I know you're an NFL fan,
yes.
I prefer full playoff. Give me 16 teams, put them in the playoff. I have a feeling you're probably going to say the same thing.
Oh, absolutely. This is probably the first year I started really getting into college football, and I didn't really get that into it because I really didn't care. There was a lot of bowl games that were not interesting whatsoever. New Mexico Bowl, Texas Bowl. Wasn't a fan.
You didn't like watching 6-6 Colorado State play 6-6 Washington State in a fascinating bowl game?
Yeah. I didn't.
Okay, well, that's another problem, too, and I agree with you on this. I think you need to up the minimum wins in college football. To earn the postseason right now, it's 6 wins. One of those can be against an FCS school. So you can win 5 Division I games, go 5-6 in D1, and still get a bowl game. You got to win 8. Syracuse was 6-6, shouldn't have been in. Colorado State was 6-6, shouldn't have been in. Washington State was 6-6, shouldn't have been in. Arkansas State was 7-5, still shouldn't have been in. And the list goes on and on. I think you need a minimum number of 8 wins to get into a bowl game, or you cut down the season, 10 or 11 games instead of 13, and you make a bigger playoff. If we had a college football playoff with 16 or even 32 teams, you'd be glued to the TV every single weekend, wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
Learn from the pros, guys.
Yeah, and we're going to have to beat out the media and TV rights for all the bowls that they want to have, but at the end of the day, if people would prefer it, hopefully they'll move in that direction.
Well, and that's the thing. Does that ever change? The BCS was big money. This +1 game, this 14 playoff, that's going to be big money. A playoff would be big money, and that's where we're headed to, but the change isn't going to happen quickly because there's just too many dollars locked in.
Absolutely. And there are all these teams and schools that are used to their bowls now, and they want to be comfortable in them. So I think it's a transition that'll have to be made slowly and over time, but
And there's one more thing, and this is my maybe pet peeve, but it's kind of technical on bowl games. This year, Oregon and Texas played in a bowl game together. If you know anything about college football, you know that Oregon was miles ahead of Texas, and sure enough on the field, Oregon beat the crap out of them. The reason they did that is you had slotting with these teams, and Pac-12 number 3, which turned out to be Oregon, played Big 12 number 3, which turned out to be Texas, or whatever the slotting was. Get rid of the slots and instead look at each team individually and say, who would Oregon match up well with? Who do we like in our bowl game? Because otherwise it's too arbitrary to me, and you get a lot of these blowouts in college football bowl games.
Yep, that's exactly good points. Now we're going to move on to our last issue, which would be the 2013 4-Down Territory Awards. We have acknowledged certain players and, thought that they were pretty damn good, so that they needed to be recognized. And here we go. First award, which I'm going to be giving out, would be Most Dramatic Performance. And that one will go to Des Bryant and RG3. They're going to share this one. There was a lot of crying, a little bit about Cousins, a little bit about Romo not necessarily getting through, and there was just a lot of drama. Altogether, you boys deserve it.
Something tells me you're being sarcastic about that.
Just a bit. Yeah.
Des Bryant was also spending a lot of money at restaurants, too, so I don't know if you want to include that drama. My first award is actually going to be named in honor of AJ. It's the AJ Lawrence UFC Fight of the Year Award. Now, here's the thing. It's not a UFC fight. It goes to the Los Angeles Dodgers. 3 things this year, and you pointed out the third one to me. They had the huge fight against the Padres where Zach Greinke broke his collarbone because he shoulder-checked Carlos Quentin, which is a terrible idea. You've got the second fight against the Diamondbacks where reliever J.P. Hal flipped a coach over the dugout and Mark McGwire is yelling at everybody like he's still on drugs. And then AJ points out, you've got the peeing in the pool. I don't know what pool gate, pee gate, something like that, where the Dodgers won the division, peed in the Diamondbacks pool. So UFC Fight of the Year in honor of AJ Lawrence, Los Angeles Dodgers.
And it's not the Silva fight I'm used to, but I'll take it.
No broken legs.
All right, and this next award I call the What Had Happened Was award. And that I'd like to give to my friend Johnny Manziel. You had a lot of explaining to do this past year. You were courtside, you were hanging with Drake, you turned 21, you signed in a few autographs. At the end of the day, I know you overslept at the Manning camp, but you were 5th in line at the Heisman. You kept us all entertained. We enjoyed watching Manziel watch 2013. Congratulations.
I gotta say though, anybody who hangs out with Drake, you can't win any awards from us, sarcastic or real.
Yes, you can, in Canada.
The Canadian, well, Justin Bieber, and maybe you have a thing for Canada.
Yeah, that could be it.
Well, before this gets awkward for people in Canada, let's move on. My second award, the You Gotta Know When to Fold 'Em award, maybe in honor of Kenny Rogers, the singer, it goes to Kobe Bryant. Kobe, April 2013, you tore your Achilles. You rushed back, you work hard, you did this weird rehab in Germany. That's all great, because you're rich and Kobe and the best. December 2013, you broke a bone in your left leg. It's over. You're 35. You're going to turn 36 next year. He's going to play a few more years, obviously. But, dude, you got to know when to fold them. Don't go out like Brett Favre. Don't wear out your welcome. I want to see you play again, but you're never going to be the same. And it's time to move on and do whatever's next in life for you.
Yep. Wrap it up.
Wrap.
All right. The most missed, most memorable award goes to someone close to my heart, Mariano Rivera. You were incredible. Played 19 seasons for the Yankees. You were the Sandman. You had 5 World Series wins, 13-time All-Star. As far as I'm concerned, number 42 will always be my number 1.
In the last number 42 in the league, he was the last guy to grandfather in the Jackie Robinson number. Now that he's retired, nobody else will ever wear it. So good for Robinson and Rivera. And my final award, my serious one, like she did a serious one, the Athlete of the Year. It's also the Sports Illustrated Sportsman of the Year. It's Peyton Manning.
The sheriff.
You can't argue with it. He looks like Hank Hill. He can throw the ball like nobody else in the NFL. Most passing yards, most touchdowns, number 1 seed, home field advantage, all this great stuff. However, Peyton, this is a 2013 award, and to win it again in 2014, you got to win the Super Bowl.
Yes, you do.
Nothing less.
Yes, and that's what we expect, and we're certain, well, we're hoping you can deliver. It would be a good way for him to go out.
Oh, okay, that's a different debate. I don't know if he's going to go out yet, but that's a totally different debate, and it's going to make this show be the most dramatic, and we have to reset that award. That's all the time we got today on 4Down Territory, guys. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter or Facebook. You can also check us out right here on this YouTube channel and comment here. And if you've got suggestions for the show in the future, let us know. We'd love to hear it. For AJ Lawrence, I'm Bobby DeMuro, and we will see you guys in another 2 weeks to debate more sports.